We're working to connect a region of over 600 mil bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. On today's headlines. A 6.9 magnitude quake struck eastern Indonesia on Friday, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. And the country is on high alert for Chikungunya, and the coronavirus disease situation. We'll be getting that from Chriselle Lacuna, joining us live from Vietnam. Over 540,000 Vietnamese youths are about to lose their jobs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. ASEAN gears up for economic recovery to sustainably address the impacts of COVID-19 with a high-level dialogue on ASEAN post-pandemic recovery. A 6.9 magnitude quake struck eastern Indonesia on Friday, according to the USGS, but there was no tsunami warning issued and no immediate reports of casualties or major damage. The undersea tremor struck at a depth of more than 600 kilometers, about 220 kilometers, south of Katabu on the island of Sulawesi, according to the agency, that with reports that it was felt hundreds of kilometers away from the epicenter. Now, in Kupang City, far south of the quake's epicenter in the Banda Sea, frightened residents were reportedly running outside as buildings and streetlights swayed. One resident said, by the name of Enki Nusi, said, "I was in the shopping center when the quake hit. Many people ran outside as stuff started falling off the shelves, and we were afraid something worse might happen." The undersea tremor struck at a depth of more than 600 kilometers, about 220 kilometers south of Katabu on the island of Sulawesi, according to the USGS. Deep quakes tend to cause less damage than shallow ones, and USGS said there was a low likelihood of casualties and damage. The Southeast Asian archipelago experiences frequent seismic and volcanic activity due to its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire, where the tectonic plates collide. Back in 2018, a 7.5 magnitude quake and subsequent tsunami on Sulawesi left more than 4,300 people dead or missing. A devastating 9.1 magnitude quake struck off the coast of Sumatra in 2004, triggering a tsunami that killed 220,000 throughout the region, including around 170,000 in Indonesia. Two police officers died of the coronavirus disease, bringing the police force's death toll from the disease to 15. In a statement, PNP spokesperson Brigadier General Bernard Manac said the two latest deaths is a 45-year-old policeman assigned at the Aviation Security Group who passed away on August 12 and a 52-year-old assigned at the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao who died on Thursday. As of Thursday night, the number of COVID-19 infections among policemen has reached 3,153, as the PNP Health Service reported 55 new confirmed cases, most of whom came from the National Capital Region Police Office. A total of 2,283 personnel have recovered from the disease, while the Health Service is also monitoring 751 probable cases and 2,546 suspected cases. Meanwhile, Malacanang appealed to nurses' sense of nationalism to convince them to stay, while the country is facing a state of public health emergency amid the prevailing coronavirus disease pandemic. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque made this statement after Filipino Nurses United sought for the lifting of the deployment ban on healthcare workers, as many of them remain unemployed. Mr. Roque said the government is already providing healthcare workers additional benefits, such as risk allowance of 15,000 pesos for those who get infected with COVID-19, life insurance, free accommodation and transportation, and free and frequent testing. Take a look.
Well, unang-una po, no, naitaas na po natin ang sahod ng mga nurses sa mga gobyernong hospital, no? Na nabigay na po sa kanila kung ano yung hinihingi nila na adjustment sa salary standardization law. At ang problema nga po natin ngayon, malaki yung diferensya sa sweldo ng mga government nurses na tinaas na at saka yung mga private nurses. No? Pero ganun pa man, sa ilalim po ng Bayanihan 2, hiningi po ng Administrasyon Duterte na magbigay po ng parang hazard allowance sa lahat po ng mga nurses, lalong-lalo na sa mga pribadong sektor kung saan mas mababa nga yung kanilang mga sahod. At nagbibigay po tayo ngayon ng iba pang incentives, gaya ng free housing at saka free testing. No? So sa tingin ko po, sa panahon ng pandemya, mananaig naman po ang nasyonalismo sa puso at damdamin ng ating mga nurses.
Harry Roque has mentioned, no? Doon po sa ating plano po sa Bayanihan, 2, makikita po dyan sa section na yan na pati po private healthcare workers ay bibigyan na po ng benepisyo galing po sa ating national government. And even yung mga hazard pay, yung mga special risk allowance, kasama na po dyan sa ating binalangkas dyan po sa sinubmit natin sa ating BICAM, no? So sana po, again, ako rin po, katulad ni Secretary Harry Roque, nakikiusap po kami sa ating mga healthcare workers. No, sana yung nationalism natin ay manaig sa panahon ngayon na meron tayong pandemya para makatulong po tayo sa gobyerno.
Ang suma total dyan kahit pa mga ibang bansa ang ating mga health workers, may iiwang silang mga mahal sa buhay dito. At sana po yun ang maisip din ng mga health professionals na kung wala namang mag-attend sa kanilang mga pamilya dito pag kailangan ng mga health workers, dun po sana manaig sa kanilang mga damdamin.
On Tuesday, the IATF released Resolution Number 64, temporarily suspending the deployment of medical professionals. The resolution also urged the Department of Health and government hospitals to hire healthcare workers to augment the workforce. Earlier this month, Malacanang announced plans to hire 10,000 healthcare workers to boost the workforce. Meanwhile, the overseas deployment ban does not apply to health workers who were able to secure employment contracts as of March 8, according to Malacanang. Now, the announcement was made after the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, in its Resolution 64 approved Monday, ordered the temporary suspension of overseas deployment of medical professionals. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the IATF EID on Thursday agreed to allow health workers with Overseas Deployment Certificate, or OEC, issued by the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA, and verified employment contracts as of March 8 to leave the country.
Na yung mga health professionals na meron na pong mga papeles, ibig sabihin, yung OEC na issued ng POEA at yung employment contract na verified as of March 8, 2020, ay po pwede pong lumabas ng bansa.
Roque's latest announcement came just hours after he said the IATF EID would take into consideration the nurses' appeals to grant exemptions to medical professionals with existing employment contracts. The IATF EID's Resolution 64 temporarily suspends the overseas deployment of health workers during the pandemic, considering the continuing state of public health emergency. The task force, based on the resolution, also urges the Department of Health and government hospitals to hire healthcare workers to augment the workforce as coronavirus or COVID-19 cases in the country continue to soar. The POEA earlier issued Resolution 09, which orders the temporary ban on the overseas deployment of medical workers abroad in a bid to ramp up the health workforce in the country amid the pandemic. Under the POEA's Resolution 9, the deployment ban is effective until the national state of emergency is lifted and until the COVID-19 related travel restrictions are lifted at the destination countries. Mr. Roque also said the resolution issued by POEA prevails. In a virtual press conference, Mr. Roque also said he believes that the sense of nationalism of the nurses will prevail amid the pandemic. As we saw earlier, Roque made this statement after Filipino Nurses United sought for the lifting of the ban on the deployment ban on healthcare workers, as many of them remained unemployed. And Roque said the government is already providing healthcare workers additional benefits, such as risk allowance, 15,000 pesos for those who get infected with COVID-19, life insurance, free accommodation and transportation, and frequent free testing. He also emphasized that once the Bayanihan 2 legislation is passed, healthcare workers in the private sector would also get salaries and benefits as competitive as those in the public sector. And let's go now to Vietnam, where the country will have access to the COVID-19 vaccine. And the country now is also on high alert against chikungunya. Joining us live from Vietnam is Chriselle Yacuna. Hello, Chriselle.
Hello, Anna. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Go ahead, Chriselle.
Yes. Let's hear the latest from Vietnam. Vietnam to have access to COVID-19 vaccine in second half of 2021, according to Health Minister. A vaccine for novel coronavirus disease may only become available in Vietnam in the second half of 2021, said Acting Minister of Health Win Tan Long. The Ministry of Health convened a teleconference with health departments in provinces and cities throughout the country on Wednesday to discuss COVID-19 prevention and control efforts. Vietnam is taking all possible measures to access a coronavirus vaccine, but it may only become available in the country in the last 6 months of 2021, Longer remarked in the meeting. The Southeast Asian nation has signed up to purchase COVID-19 vaccines produced by Russia and the UK, while at the same time expediting the development of locally made jab. 4 groups of researchers are currently in the process of developing coronavirus vaccines in Vietnam, according to Win Ngo Quang, a Ministry of Health official. Among them, the Institute of Vaccines and Medical Biologicals is planning to conduct human trials of its vaccine between October and December of this year. The shot is anticipated to be distributed to the local market in October 2021. Another group of scientists from Vaviotech, a state-owned firm managed by the Ministry of Health, is also expected to conduct human trials of its vaccine in early 2021. Last week, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Russia had become first country to grant regulatory approval to a COVID-19 vaccine after less than 2 months of human testing. Vietnam's COVID-19 tally has reached 1,007, with 542 having recovered and 25 deaths as of Friday morning. Another headline, Alma, Vietnam on high alert as Chikungunya rages in Cambodia. The administration of An Giang province in Vietnam's Mekong Delta has required relevant agencies to strengthen measures to prevent the chikungunya outbreaks spreading in Cambodia from entering Vietnam. An official letter was sent to departments, agencies, and people's committees of 11 districts and towns and cities in the province on Wednesday to increase alertness and monitoring chikungunya epidemic occurring in Cambodia, said An Giang Vice Chairman Le Van Phuc. Chikungunya is a viral disease transmitted to humans through infected Aedes aegypti mosquitoes. The letter mentioned, adding that its symptoms may include acute fever, severe joint pain, muscle pain, a headache, nausea, fatigue, and a rash. Cambodia has seen the reemergence of the chikungunya virus in the 15 cities and provinces with more than 2,000 infected cases so far. Pham Tan Tam, director of An Giang's Center for Disease Control, noted that chikungunya has a mode of transmission similar to a dengue fever, but there have been no cases recorded in Vietnam so far. The disease is considered less dangerous than dengue fever, as the mortality rate is low. Its main vector is mosquitoes, while human-to-human transmission has yet to be documented, Tam added. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Chriselle, for your time. You have a great weekend. Thank you.
Have a great weekend too. Reporting live from Ho Chi Minh City, this is Chriselle Yacuna. We live in interesting times.
Okay, next, let's go to Sri Lanka, where some stranded Sri Lankans in the Middle East cannot afford to get tickets home. Joining us live from Sri Lanka is Vanessa Viloria Silva. Hello, Vanessa.
Hi, Alma. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Go ahead.
Yes, Alma. Sri Lankan resumed flights to bring back migrant workers from Kuwait yesterday, August 20. But returnees say many Sri Lankans remain stuck in the Middle Eastern country as they cannot afford the ticket home. Sri Lankan Airlines is charging a little bit over 250,000 Sri Lankan rupees per person for the ticket and quarantine expenses, a sum most of the stranded migrants cannot afford as they are out of work. The first flight from Kuwait in 3 months arrived at the Matala airport yesterday morning, August 20, with 160 passengers on board. According to the Ministry of Foreign Relations, around 19,000 Sri Lankans in Kuwait are registered to return to Sri Lanka. The government halted the repatriation of migrant workers stranded in the Middle East and elsewhere, as a majority of these Kuwait returnees tested positive for COVID-19, and that increased the number of confirmed cases in Sri Lanka. And another update, Alma, a total number of COVID-19 infections recorded in the island has risen to 2,918, along with the identification of 16 new cases yesterday, August 20. All 16 positive cases were identified as individuals who returned to the country from Chennai, India. Accordingly, a total of 142 persons, including one foreign national, are under medical treatment for the virus at present. A total of 630 positive cases have been recorded from the Kandakadu coronavirus cluster, while 991 persons who arrived in the island from overseas are also confirmed to have contracted the virus. The epidemiology unit stated 97 persons are under medical observation on suspicion of having contracted COVID-19, while the total number of recoveries now stands at 2,765. Back to you, Alma.
So the cause of the tickets getting expensive is because of the quarantine fees. Is that it?
Yes, Alma. Quarantine fees and the ticket together cost 250,000 Sri Lankan rupees per person.
Okay. It used to be. Do you know how much it was used to be? It used to be. Not yet.
I'm not quite sure.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, but that's quite expensive already. All right. Thank you very much,
Yes.
Vanessa, for all your updates there. You take care. Take care of the baby. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting live from Sri Lanka, this is Vanessa Viloria Silva, and we live in interesting times.
Now, over 540,000 Vietnamese youths are going to lose their jobs because of the coronavirus pandemic. That and more. Joining us live is Ralph Vandolf Empire. Hello, Ralph.
Hi there, Alma. Happy Friday.
Happy
Here
Friday.
are the updates here in Vietnam. Yes, over 540,000 Vietnamese youths to lose jobs due to COVID-19 fallout. According to a new report, if the COVID-19 pandemic is contained within 6 months, 548,000 people in the 15 to 24 age group are likely to lose their jobs. But that is the worst case scenario. And if it is defeated within 3 months, the job loss is estimated at 370,000, equivalent to a 10.8% jobless rate. The textile industry is forecast to be the hardest hit at 15%, followed by hotels and restaurants, 13.6%, and agriculture, which is 10.6%. Textiles and footwear companies are suffering from falling orders and lack of raw materials, forcing massive layoffs, while entry restrictions for foreigners take a heavy toll on tourism and catering. A survey by the General Statistics Office released in early July said that in the first half of the year, nearly 31 million workers aged 15 or more have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Some 17.6 million people received less income than before the outbreak. Experts said the economy is yet to recover from the fallout of the country's first wave of COVID-19, and the second wave since July 25 is likely to worsen the labor market. The Ministry of Labor, Invalids and Social Affairs estimated that 60,000 to 70,000 people will lose their jobs every month until the end of the year, mostly in tourism, services, construction, transport, and manufacturing. Now, another headline, Alma, 5 Chinese jailed for stealing $203,500 from companies' toll stations. A Ho Chi Minh City court has sentenced 5 Chinese burglars to up to 16 years in jail for stealing 4.7 billion Vietnamese dong, or about $203,500 from several companies and toll stations. The Ho Chi Minh City People's Court on Tuesday gave Ma Ting Dinh 16 years for theft. His Chinese accomplices and Vietnamese accomplices got 3 to 14 years for the same crime. Another Vietnamese was sentenced to 1 year for concealing their crime. The Chinese came to Vietnam in 2018 and contacted the 3 Vietnamese to hire cars to travel to various places for committing burglaries. On April 29, 2018, some of the gang went to a toll station in the Ho Chi Minh City Chuong Luong Highway in the Mekong Delta's Tien Giang province, cut wires, and beat 2 dogs to death before stealing money from a safe inside. But an employee spotted them on the camera and together with his colleagues caught Te with a bag containing $121,000 and 200. 2 of his gang members got away. The gang returned to China on learning about his arrest, but they returned a few months later and burgled several companies in Tai Binh, Hưng Yên, and Hai Duong provinces, and Hai Phong City in the north, getting away with hundreds of millions of Vietnamese dong. After they broke into a toll station in Hai Duong and a company in nearby Hanam, stealing at least $47,600. On August 13, 2018, they were arrested by the police. Lastly, 2 Chinese loan sharks jailed for charging extortionate interest. 2 Chinese nationals were sentenced to 18 months in prison for running a loan racket, charging yearly interest of 912.5%. 3 Vietnamese accomplices, including 2 men and 1 woman, were sentenced to 1 year imprisonment. According to the indictment, Jiang Mao and Yu Lili, identified as ringleaders, were found to have hired Long and Hui to set up 3 companies in Ho Chi Minh City. They created 3 mobile phone apps offering loans of over 100 billion Vietnamese dong, around $4.26 million at 2.5% interest per day, equivalent to 75% a month and 912.5% a year, more than 30 times higher than rates at local commercial banks. These 3 loan apps are widely advertised on the internet and Facebook, as well as via street leaflets, which is fast and requires little paperwork. Investigators said the ring had nearly 500 customers and had earned profits of over 658 million Vietnamese dong, or about $28,300, after 6 months of operation. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Ralph, and thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today.
My
Happy
pleasure,
Friday.
Alma. This is Ralph Bundle Empire reporting live from Hanoi, Vietnam. We live in interesting times.
The coronavirus pandemic may have driven as many as 100 million people back into extreme poverty. That is according to World Bank President David Malpass. Take a look. The Washington-based development lender previously estimated that 50 million or 60 million people would fall into extreme poverty due to COVID-19, but the new estimate puts the deterioration at 70 to 100 million, and he said that number could go higher if the pandemic worsens or drags on. The situation makes it imperative that creditors reduce the amount of debt held by poor countries at risk, going beyond the commitment to suspend debt payments, according to Malpass in an interview. Even so, more countries will be obliged to restructure their debt. The coronavirus pandemic may have driven as many as 100 million back into extreme poverty, and that is according to the World Bank president. Now, the Washington-based development lender previously estimated 60 million people would fall into extreme poverty. And this all comes as the global cases around the world reach 22,593,363, with global deaths of 792,396. Now, Filipinos in New Zealand have reacted to the re-emergence of COVID-19 community cases there. Greg Bessa files this report.
The Filipino community in New Zealand was part of the strong and united 5 million team that worked together with the government in successfully stamping out the first wave of COVID-19 cases that hit the country during the first 2 quarters of this year. As New Zealand is now experiencing a second wave of the coronavirus infection by community transmission, members of the Filipino community are again willing and ready to be part of such team as the government is reinforcing once more its go hard, go early strategy aimed at defeating the resurgence of COVID-19 for the second time around. Due to new COVID-19 community cases in South Auckland, the Prime Minister, upon consultation with her cabinet and health officials, decided to put the Auckland region in lockdown at alert level 3, while the rest of the country was under alert level 2 for 3 days from the midday of 12 of August. As the number of cases grew while the government was determining the source of the community infection, the status of alert levels was extended to another 12 days until the midnight of 26 of August. In the Auckland region in particular, wherein travels are strictly prohibited unless classified as essentials, members of the Filipino community are doing their best to comply with the government guidelines and restrictions in terms of their movement and in adhering to health and safety requirements. They are also taking advantage of the lockdown to do productive activities within their respective bubbles. Yet, just like the rest of the population in New Zealand, a number of Filipinos from various backgrounds have expressed their views, sentiments, and apprehensions on the re-emergence of the coronavirus in the country.
I appreciate the Prime Minister's quick decision to move and impose alert level 3 in Auckland Greater Area to combat the resurgence of the COVID-19.
The government made the right decision to impose restriction again, but they should have a solid plan. As a health worker, my message to my fellow nurses in New Zealand and all over the world, we should keep ourselves safe by observing all the necessary precautions in preventing the spread of the disease.
Yeah, initial reaction regarding us going back to lockdown 3, especially here in Auckland with a community transfer. Like everybody, I guess we were a bit scared and unsure of what was going on. But then again, realizing how we tackled the first lockdown, we just had to say and trust the government at this stage. They've done a good job.
It was really a surprise to learn that there is a community transmission of COVID-19. Well, that is after 100 days of no active cases. To be honest, it created a bit of panic in my family until it sinks in and it becomes our new normal again. Well, in Auckland, we are alert level 3 at the moment. The impact of this is to my students. As a teacher, it's a huge and massive impact to the learning of our students.
Surprising to find ourselves back to lockdown last Wednesday, and it was unbelievable because we get used to living our lifestyle in alert level 1, but I'm pretty sure that it was all for our own good and for our own safety. So let's just comply to the lockdown rules. Let's all stay home, wear masks if we're going out, and let's all hope and pray that this crisis will soon come to an end.
COVID-19 pandemic has once again reappeared, causing Auckland to go back to level 3 and all the other places here in New Zealand back to level 2. As a Cambridge student, it is very worrying for us, as far as I know, that our end-of-year exams may or may not be happening.
Ang masasabi ko lang po na bumalik po ang second wave na COVID-19 dito sa New Zealand ay iba yung pag-iingat, lalong-lalo na po kami mga FW rito ay nangangamba rin po sa pagkat ang sakit na to ay talagang lumalaganap na sa buong mundo at marami na rin po napipinsala na mga trabaho Lalo-lalo na po yung mga kababayan natin dito sa New Zealand na walan ng trabaho po.
Ang reaksyon ko po sa muling pagbabalik ng COVID-19 dito sa bansang New Zealand ay ayun po, nakakalungkot at muli po ay bumalik kami sa dati na kailangan ng social distancing, lalo na po sa pamimili, kailangan mo rin mag-ingat at minsan ay hindi ka malayang nakakapunta sa mga kaibigan mo, sa mga mahal sa buhay mo.
On the other hand, Philippine Ambassador to New Zealand, His Excellency Mr. Jesus Domingo, is calling the cooperation of the Filipino community in abiding with the government's COVID-19 guidelines, as he is reassuring them of the Philippine Embassy's continuing services amid the reactivation of alert levels across the country. As the government is waging another battle against COVID-19, Director General of the Ministry of Health of New Zealand, Dr. Ashley Blomfield, is rallying once more the support of the 5 million team by saying, and I quote, "We have done this before. We can do it again." From Lower Hutt, Wellington Region, New Zealand, this is Greg Bessa. We live in interesting times.
And here are the latest coronavirus numbers in the region. Take a look. Brunei saw one new case of on August 19, taking the total to 143, 3 deaths reported. Cambodia, one new case reported on August 14, bringing the total to 273, 0 deaths. Indonesia has 2,226 new infections and 72 deaths reported on August 20, bringing the total to 147,211. It has 6,418 deaths. Laos saw 2 new cases recorded on August 14, taking the total to 22, 0 deaths. Malaysia saw 5 new cases recorded on August 20, taking the total to 9,240, 125 deaths. Myanmar saw 2 new cases on August 20, taking the total to 399 and 6 deaths. Philippines saw 4,339 new cases and 88 deaths on August 20, taking the total to 178,022 and cases and 2,883 deaths. Now, Singapore saw 68 new cases on August 20, taking the total to 56,099 with 27 deaths. Thailand recorded 7 new cases on August 20, bringing the total to 3,389, and as of 58 with 58 deaths. And as of August 20, Vietnam's Ministry of Health confirmed a total of 994 cases of COVID-19. However, 533 of the affected patients have recovered and been discharged from hospitals, and Vietnam has recorded 25 deaths due to the pandemic. The latest local cases have been reported from Da Nang, Hanoi, Haidong, Duong, and Quang Nam, and global cases now is 22,593,363, with global deaths of 792,396. ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
The biggest and widest talent competition in Philippine television continues with over 7 million pesos in cash prizes. Tagisan ng Galing Part 2. 3 winners will be chosen in each category. Singing category, second runner-up will receive 500,000 pesos. First runner-up will receive 1 million pesos. And for the grand champion, 2 million pesos. Dance category, second runner-up will receive 500,000 pesos. First runner-up will receive 1 million pesos. And for the grand champion, 2 million pesos. Audition now. Send your 3-minute performance video to tagisananggaling@gmail.com. For inquiries, call Nikki at 0977-651-9504 or 8784-7450, local 1363. Shane at 0995-880-8004 or 8784-7450, local 1415. Don't forget to like and follow Tagisan ng Galing's Facebook fan page. And subscribe to Tagisan ng Galing's YouTube channel for more announcements. Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 is presented by Eagle Broadcasting Corporation and Net25.
A Malaysian coroner will begin an inquiry next week into the death of a French-Irish teenager whose unclothed body was found in the jungle after she went missing on holiday last year. Nora Coirin, a 15-year-old with learning difficulties, disappeared from the resort where she was staying with her London-based family, triggering a 10-day hunt involving helicopters, sniffer dogs, and hundreds of searchers. Her body was discovered close to the jungle retreat, and an autopsy found that she probably starved and died of internal bleeding after spending about a week in the dense rainforest. Malaysian police insisted there was no sign of foul play, and authorities classed the case as requiring no further action. But her parents, who believe there was a criminal element to her death, as they say the teen would not have wandered off alone, pushed for an inquest which started Monday. They described the inquest, which runs until September 4 and will be live streamed to the public, as a crucial element in the fight for truth and justice for Nora. Last week, the coroner went to the Dusun resort south of Kuala Lumpur, where the teenager disappeared from her room on August 4, 2019, the day after the family had checked in. She also made a pre-inquiry visit to the area where the body was found, police said, a trip described by the Quarin family's new lawyer, S. Sactivel, as quite thorough. The teenager's Irish mother and French father will not be present at the inquest proceedings because of the pandemic. They will instead be interviewed by the coroner on a video conferencing platform. 62 more witnesses will be called on to give evidence for the first time, according to the lawyer, including police, hikers who found her body, and a British forensics expert who will also join by video link. The Senate on Thursday ratified the Bayanihan to Recover as One Bayanihan 2 bill, a measure that seeks to allow President Duterte to realign funds for the coronavirus disease crisis. Now this after the Congressional Bicameral Conference Committee approved the reconciled version of the Bayanihan 2 bill on Thursday. After 3 days of marathon sessions, the House of Representatives is set to ratify the bill on Monday, August 24. The measure sets aside 140 billion pesos for the coronavirus pandemic response, with allotments for various government programs to help affected Filipinos and sectors, plus an additional 25.5 billion peso standby appropriations. In his sponsorship speech, Senator Sonny Angara said that 140 billion of regular appropriations included 3 billion for the procurement of face masks, personal protective equipment, and face shield, 4.5 billion for the construction of temporary medical isolation quarantine facilities, field hospitals, dormitories, expansion of government hospital capacity, and another 4.5 billion to the Office of Civil Defense for isolation facilities and other requirements for the rent of various facilities, as well as food and transportation of COVID-19 patients, while the government constructs more permanent facilities. The measure also allocates 13.5 billion for the Department of Health to employ emergency human resources for health, 820 million as a fund for overseas Filipinos under the Department of Foreign Affairs, 13 billion for the government's Cash for Work program and other support programs for impacted sectors. Now, ASEAN gears up for economic recovery to sustainably address the impacts of COVID-19 with a high-level dialogue on ASEAN post-pandemic recovery held on July 30 via video conference organized by the ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta. The dialogue discussed best practices and recovery forecasts of various international organizations on their respective programs to assist the countries in their recovery plans. Let's take a look.
Previously shared during our meeting the other day on this topic, we may have certain sectors like tourism, transportation, hospitality, services, manufacturing, etc. The MSMEs and household businesses, people who lost their jobs, especially vulnerable groups that require focused attentions and resources from the governments to help alleviate their burdens, that we may face the contradictions between the need to open up the economies for quick recovery and the requirement to stay cautious in containing the spread of the pandemic effect. And third, the recovery process should cover both short-term, medium, and long-term measures, as all the speakers emphasized during their presentations. Those measures aimed at assisting the affected sectors and those vulnerable groups to recover might be in the short and medium range, while those longer-term measures might embark on efforts to promote inclusiveness, sustainability, and strengthening the resilience of the ASEAN community in face of future shocks. Fourth, we all agree that the recovery exercise should involve the participation and contribution of various stakeholders in the society, as well as valuable contribution from regional and international organizations. I encourage the World Bank, the IDB, UNESCAP, and World Economic Forum to continue working closely with ASEAN in our efforts towards sustainable and comprehensive recovery.
Certainly, mitigation policy should be there, but we have to distinguish from the exit policy. Coming into exit policy stage, we will have a huge demand shock in decades. So, and also we would have a slow removal of the restriction of people's movements, particularly cross-border. So that's a big challenge. Certainly we have to have a very strong macro stimulus and others. And so we have to survive with this huge economic crisis. And then the third stage, policies for the new normal. Already presenters talk about many things, inclusiveness, sustainability, more digital, and certainly we like to have rigorous economic activities, better governance, further integration. But one missing was fiscal health, because we will have a very bold macroeconomic policies in exit policy. So policies in the new normal should take care of the fiscal health. Second, some people say that globalization is over. I strongly oppose to that, particularly in the context of ASEAN and East Asia. We still can utilize global value chains or production networks very actively for economic development. And we know that the production networks are pretty robust against a short-term shock. But if the shock is prolonged, then production networks may be reshuffled permanently. So I think it's very important to keep production networks with as a huge demand shock, and also rather with better enhanced competitiveness to attract more production networks in this crisis. Third, digital technology, or ICT. I think we really need a sort of special attention for that. Digital transformation is really accelerating, particularly in developed countries. So ASEAN should catch up with that. Three ways to utilize ICT from my viewpoint. One, to strengthen production networks. Two, revitalize traditional industries like agriculture, cottage industry, and others, and also improve government services. And third, expand cross-border production, cross-border service outsourcing, and also other digitized services. I think we have to be very aggressive in utilizing ICT. The last point, fourth, if we look back the history of ASEAN integration, Asian currency crisis in 1997, global financial crisis 2008, those were utilized as big springboard ASEAN integration. So I think it's ASEAN should really utilize this opportunity as a springboard for further integration and further connectivity. So ASEAN cooperation, I think we have various aspects. To me, health, macro, production networks, digital. Those are very, very important topics to enhance cooperation. And also, we have a bunch of integration initiative homeworks. AEC can be deepened, and also the conclusion of RCEP is very, very important. Thank you very much.
Okay, I agree with you that it's natural that our world does change, no matter we want it or not. One can look at the latest COVID-19, how it does change the way we live and we work. Furthermore, the change does generate both chance and challenge. We can look at the COVID-19 as well. The pandemic has already severely affected the global economy. On the other hand, COVID-19 also has accelerated the adoption of digital culture worldwide. That's why one can describe our world as triple C world, the world with three words starting by the letter C: change, chance, and challenge. So, ladies and gentlemen, our number one recommendation as the ASEAN Back Advisory Council, the body representing the ASEAN business community, is that it is immediate establishment of special high-level commission. This special commission must be mandated by the leaders to make sweeping and far-reaching recommendations for immediate action, and once for all deliver the ambitious of four pillars AEC for prosperity of AEC. So I also pleased to report that ASEAN BAC has already submitted to the ASEAN leaders a package of recommendation entitled Pathway to Recovery and Hope for ASEAN. It is blueprint for immediate regional action to bring back trust and confidence in the way we do our business as we reopen our economies and inputs for the sustainable and inclusive recovery plan. So it is our blueprint is the book we also have submitted to ASEAN leaders, so you can see on the screen. So hopefully, Your Excellency, Secretary General, and also Deputy Secretary General ASEAN, you have received this print copy. So it's the comprehensive package of our recommendation. We do not just make recommendations, ladies and gentlemen. We offer to help prioritize them and to draw up urgent implementation plans. And the ASEAN leaders at the 36th summit underlined the crucial involvement of the private sector in the post-pandemic economic recovery. That's why ASEAN BAC has proposed a setting up of special disease advisory board to engage with the ASEAN high-level special commission. So, ladies and gentlemen, we strongly recommend that in ASEAN, we should establish a kind of special body we call special high-level commission in ASEAN. And our private sector, we are ready to cooperate with the ASEAN, also with the esteemed high-level commission of ASEAN to set up ASEAN high-level business council to cooperate with you. And I think that in the world and in the region with triple C, with change, with chance, with challenge, I think cooperation is the key. So I think that the cooperation between the private and public sector is the key for ASEAN to move forward, to overcome the challenge and also capitalize on the opportunities coming to us so that we can overcome the pandemic. Also, we can respond to the pandemic effectively and efficiently. And I think that cooperation is the key. So ASEAN BAC, we are ready to cooperate with.
And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.